So ever since I was a kid, I love stories with music. And when I was a little kid, I would sit at the piano and I would tell myself these stories and I would play the music. And when I was 12, I wrote my first musical. And in high school, my friend Paul and I would go home we'd go to his house after school, and we would write musicals and we would send letters to Leonard Bernstein. My dream, my fantasy, was that I was sitting in the back of a theater and I was watching my musical on stage. So when I was 17, I left home, and by 19, I was living alone in Northern California, and I was not living that dream. And one day I was sitting at my piano, and this thought came to me. I was like, am I going to live a life searching for security or searching for freedom? And suddenly these two questions popped out of my head, A and B, two characters locked in mortal combat and singing on either side of a cage. One sings, "Here I am, at my golden cage, growing thin, growing pale. There you are on the outside looking in." And the other one, who is a bird person who can fly, sings, "Here I am, at your palace gate, in a state of despair. There you are on the inside looking out." And then they sing in perfect harmony together. "There on the inside outside where you stand, all that glitters in your hand." It's a musical. And then A and B becomes Alpha and Beta, and then Althea and Boris. And Althea is a melodramatic diva, unlike myself, who is trapped in this cage, which she experiences as made of cement and iron. Boris is this bird person who can fly. He spent his whole life looking for this cage, and for him, the cage is made of gold, and it's perfect. And he finally finds it, and this woman is trapped inside of it. He's got to get her out, so he tricks her out of the cage and convinces her she can fly, and then takes her to the edge of a cliff. There's a cliff. And he shoves her off to her death. Then he comes into the cage, he locks himself in, and it is cement and iron from the inside. And now he is trapped until Althea comes back flying with the secret of how to unlock the cage. It's epic! And there's just one problem. I do not know how to read or write music. I am an eloquent illiterate. And I'm not going to be able to remember this. This is a long musical, and there's no phone in my pocket at this point. It doesn't exist. The phone actually lives in the house, with the cord. So I realized I have to learn how to read and write music. So I decided to go back to school. I find this school, music school, and there's just one requirement, and that's that you have to play a musical instrument that you can carry around, unlike a piano. And I had had a few lessons on lots of instruments as a kid, including the harp, so I became the harpist. And this was perfect, because while I could not read or write music, I could invent or fake music. Fake, yeah, the technical term for that is improvisation. And I discovered that I could improvise and make it sound like I could play wedding music and background music. I could make a living with this harp to support my musical theater writing habit. So I did that, and I finished writing the musical, and we produced it, and everybody loved the music, but everybody had problems with the plot. And they always had the same 4 questions. 1, but why would a bird look for a cage? Number 2, why did he shove her off the cliff? That's so evil. 3, how come she can suddenly fly? And what is the secret that unlocks the cage? And I don't know the answers. I don't know the answers. I've hit a wall. I'm stuck. But this harp, it's like it's given me wings. I feel so free. It's like I'm flying when I play. And I start having a career with the harp. I start literally flying around the world. I start playing with symphony orchestras, my own music. I record albums. Get a Grammy nomination. I invent a new harp. It's like I am an icon of harp freedom. But every time someone says, I love your playing, I'm thinking, but what I really do is write musical theater. So I'm at this harp festival, and this guy walks up to me and he says, you must be so proud of your career. Are you happy? And I'm like, no, I am not happy. And I tell him the story of the Golden Cage. And he says to me, well, would you be happy if it was on Broadway and winning awards? And I said, I would be happy if I were working on this show 30 minutes a day, if I were living the commitment that I say that I have. And so he says, okay, fine, I'm holding you to that commitment. You send me your 30 minutes at the end of every day, my midnight. I'm like, okay, so I start doing that. And then one night I kind of get a late start. And around exactly, actually, 11:59, I get this text. If you do not send me your 30 minutes, you will burn in hell. And I realized that this man has a deeper commitment to my dream than I have myself. He is pushing me. And suddenly I understand why Boris pushes Althea off the cliff. Because she begs him to. Push me, Boris, push me. Take me to the edge and show me that I can fly. Yes, yes. And now I have that answer, and I realize that I am living this story as it is unfolding. But there are still 3 questions. So I go to a dramaturg. And a dramaturg is someone who untangles a playwright's ideas. And so I say to this dramaturg, I say, okay, you tell me, why does this bird person want a cage? I know he does, I just don't know why. And so he says to me, well, you'll find that out by knowing his backstory. And you'll learn that by looking at your own backstory. So I go back and I look, what are the stories that were sort of like, this is the way life is? And there was a story of my mother who longed to be discovered as the amazing opera singer that she is. And there was my grandmother whose father forbid her to be a performer. And I have this generations of this quest, and we all do. We have these quests that tell us what what is going to happen, or what we can do and what we can't do. And suddenly I hear Boris singing. My father sang the tales to me every night when I was small, of those who left to find the cage, returned in shame, or not at all, and snug inside my little nest, my mind inflamed with cage and quest, I swore I'd be the one to prove the myth was true, that I would find the golden cage, the place where everything you've ever dreamt would happens for you. So now I know why he is searching for a cage. But I also know how it is that Althea can suddenly fly. Because she could always fly. She too is a bird person. She too heard those tales from her father. She too went searching after this cage, and she found that cage, and she locked herself inside, and she lost her wings, and she forgot who she was. And we all do this. We all get trapped. We all forget that we were born to fly. So now I really need to know that last question. What is the secret that unlocks the cage? And so I'm talking to my friend Rachel one day, and I tell her the story of the golden cage. And she says, you must finish this. And then she does something that nobody else had done. She hands me a check. She says, use this, finish the show, share it with the world. And I experienced something that I have never experienced before with this show. I experienced that I am not alone in this. And I hear Althea sing, "You build your cage from dreams that died, and every heartache that you ever held inside. You forge the bars from every pain and sorrow you have known. And in your cage, you are alone." And then Althea says, "But it's not the cage that traps you. It's when you lock yourself inside. And the key is when someone reaches in and you reach back." And I realize that my friend is reaching in to me. And so I take that check and I finish the show and we do a reading of the show and things start to completely change. A festival in New York invites the show to be part of the festival. It wins awards. It's filmed for distribution on the streaming musicals network. Think Netflix for original musicals. And so now I am sitting there watching a film of this show. And I see the last scene with these two amazing actors, Althea and Boris, and they are holding hands about to fly. And something clicks. And I remember this moment when A and B split out from my head. And I lived that life of separation and disconnect, and now they have just connected. And I realize that I have a question I didn't dare to ask, which is, what if that myth of the cage was true? What if there is something locked inside that cage that is worth searching for? What did they find in that cage? Well, they found each other. And when they honestly bared their heartache and they shared their stories of where they were trapped on the inside and on the outside, they unlocked each other's cages and they remembered who they were. And we all get trapped in this cage in our minds. But when we can honestly and vulnerably admit that we're trapped, and if we can share those dreams that we have, this is what unlocks the cage. And this is how we remember that we were born to fly together.